dive into the slides, I want to ask you a few questions. My first question to you is, do you think that there's environmental problems? So are you concerned about the environment with climate crisis, biodiversity, material scarcity, etc.? Please raise your hand if you think there's a problem. Okay, we agree with that. Then I would like to ask a follow-up question. Circular economy, is that one of the solutions to tackle the challenges that we face as a society with the environment? Who thinks circular economy is one of the solutions? Okay, we're starting a debate here, but I have another question, which is a bit more personal. If you think back of the last 5 years and your usage of your smartphone, did you in those 5 years actually replace the battery in order to preserve its lifetime for a longer period of time? Again, please raise your hand if you indeed repaired your battery of your smartphone. And there is the problem that we face as a society. Many of us are aware, many of us see, okay, we should change our behavior, we should move to the circular economy, but we fail to do so in the end. There are a few exceptions, but if you consider the fact that we are in a specific room with a lot of experts here and a lot of people interested in the circular economy, for just a general audience, this is even more challenging. So awareness is not sufficient. And actually, that's also what we found in our own research. Together with my colleague, Lise Monnier, we studied repair considerations of people. And this needs, okay, did they consider repair or did they consider replacement? And if you see these results, then actually they're quite shocking. In many cases, people don't even consider repair. So it's not that they tried to repair and didn't work out. This is just not even considering it as an option. It's especially true for the partially malfunctioning products. So indeed, you with your smartphone, it's just not ideal, this battery that's dying on you and you have to charge it all the time. It's just annoying. But rather than indeed thinking of a replacing of the battery, we just replace the whole smartphone instead. So repair is not something that is top of mind and it's not something that is common practice. So why is that the case actually? Well, if you look at theories for behavior change, then people need two things in order to change their behavior. One is motivation and the other is ability. If we start with motivation, then you need to be motivated to do a certain behavior, and especially when you want to change your behavior. What can be motivators for that? Well, a very common one is that you feel pleasure. Your new behavior is pleasurable, so you want to do that. Or you want to avoid pain because you don't like the other status. Social acceptance is also a way to motivate people. So if everybody's doing a certain behavior, then we feel like, oh yeah, that's maybe the behavior to go for. Let's do that as well and change our current behavior. So those can be motivators for making sure that we change our behavior into more circular consumption. But there's also ability factors playing a role. And ability factors are all the factors that make it more easy or more difficult to perform a certain behavior. So time can be a factor. If it takes a lot of time, it's much more difficult to do. Or if it takes a lot of money. Or if we have to invest a lot of physical effort in it. Or if it's very complex and we need to really think about it hard and have sufficient knowledge. Those are all ability factors that make it more problematic to change our behavior. If we then look back at repair, and also this also applies to many other circular behaviors, such as sharing, maintaining, then actually there's not that much motivation that people have. It's not fun to repair your smartphone. It's also not necessarily a socially accepted thing to do, as we already saw in this room. Only a few were repairing their smartphone, so why should we bother? Also from an ability perspective, it's a very time-consuming thing to do. It's also quite effortful, and it's not something that you can do easily or, very quickly. And if you then compare it to the alternative, the replacement of the phone, then actually that is going fast and a very quick and easy process. If you want to buy a new product, then you can just have a daily delivery and have it within, sometimes even within a few hours. You already have the new product. So there you can see already the trade-off and the complexity of moving towards these circular behaviors. So if you look at the action line, then actually only behavior change occurs when there's sufficient motivation and sufficient ability. Those together actually determine whether the behavior change will take place. So what can we do about this? Well, I would like to suggests that we should find design interventions or other types of interventions in order to move to across the action line. So either by motivating people more, increasing their motivation, or increasing their ability. And we can use design as one of the solutions to do so. And I would like to show you a few examples of how we can actually strive for more ability or motivation in relationship to repair practices. And I would like to start with a recent one that is actually introduced as a part of the right to repair legislation. In the right to repair legislation, the very recent update of that, the European Union has suggested that every country should have a database of repairers. And actually this is the one that is introduced in the Netherlands. It's a website of Techniek Nederland, and there they can show, like, okay, if you have a specific product, so a smartphone, in my location Delft, then it will give you all sorts of lists of certified repairers. So as a consumer, you can have, you have more ability, because you have more knowledge of, okay, these are the repairers that I can go to and that I can actually use for my smartphone problem. However, this also suggests that people are actually considering repair. And as I said before, unfortunately, they're not. They're not even thinking it as an option. They're already in this replacement mode. And therefore, they're not checking it out. So this can be very fruitful, but we first need to make sure that consumers are also in this action mode and will search for a repairer at first. So we thought, okay, we also need to make sure that these consumers are set in that repair mindset. How can we do that? Together with my colleague Renske van den Bergen, who is also here today, and my colleague Lise Magnier, we started with, okay, how can we enhance the ability of the consumer? And really start with this consumer when he has a problem with a product. So we started with a study on coffee machines. Well, we all, many of us, let's put it like that, appreciate a coffee in the morning. And just imagine a situation, you're using your coffee machine and suddenly it doesn't work. There's no coffee coming out. Well, big problem for many of us. So, but then actually, you don't know anything. It's not working. What to do? Well, we thought, okay, if we can add something to the coffee machine and add a fault indication. So rather than not working, it will say, I'm not working, fault 2. Well, then you can check the online manual and see fault 2 actually means that rubber seal is damaged and I need to replace this rubber seal of the water container. Well, that already gives people like a sense of how to start the repair. They know now the problem, so they've diagnosed the problem, and therefore they can actually pursue a repair action. So in an experiment, we actually tested the effect of such a fault indication on this willingness to repair. And as expected, we indeed found this positive effect. So if there's a fault indication, people are more willing to start a repair action. We also found that this is due to the perception of self-efficacy. And with self-efficacy, I mean that they can have like a can-do mentality. So people feel in charge of the repair action and think like, I can do this. I can work this problem and solve it myself. Then we thought, okay, this seal is of course also a relatively simple and a relatively easy, and maybe even also a relatively cheap repair problem. What happens if we actually make it a bit more complex and a bit more expensive problem? So we replicated the effect for this stick vacuum cleaner. Again, we had a fault indication now in the shape of a light. Again, we explained, hey, there's a problem with the battery, and that would be then the reason what to do in order to fix it. And just like in the coffee machine, we found that indeed providing a fault indication boosted their ability. They were more willing to repair it, and they also felt more in charge. They had this can-do mentality. So then we thought, okay, this fault indication works quite nicely, but are there any boundary effects? And one thing we noticed, of course, with the fault indication is that you're putting people themselves in charge, which is very beneficial for products that are never being repaired by professionals, such as a coffee machine. They're just too cheap for that. And also stick vacuum cleaner is relatively cheap. But what happens if we make a more expensive product that people are already used to having repaired by professionals? So in the next study, we compared the vacuum cleaner, similar to the one before, and with the washing machine. Washing machine is a category that many people are already accustomed to repairing, so they know that there's a repair professional that you can call, they will come over and they will fix it. So if you see what the results showed, for the normal vacuum cleaner, we found similar effects as the coffee machine and the stick vacuum cleaner. So again, adding the fault indication boosts people's willingness to repair the product and also the can-do mentality. But for the washing machine, we didn't find any effect. Actually, we think this is due to the fact that if you call a professional, you don't need the fault diagnosis. Because, yeah, the professional will figure it out anyway. So you don't need this first hint of, like, this is how to solve it. You just, yeah, call the professional anyway. So all in all, we found, okay, fault indications are pretty important for these, yeah, low-end products that people have no accustomed practice in repairing. And then can actually help them to put them in this perspective and actually start adopting these circular practices, as we would like to see in a circular economy. Another study that we did in the same team is we investigated modular designs. Well, modularity is also considered a way to enhance people's ability to repair devices. Because if it's modular, you can easily take out product components, such as, for example, the camera, replace it with another camera, and then you can fix easily your smartphone. Fairphone is a very beautiful example of that, as you can see in the slide. And therefore, indeed, you can keep these products for a longer period of time because the repair is made easy. We thought, okay, let's check that indeed if modularity will also boost people's repair tendency. So we did a similar study as for the coffee machine. We again explained, hey, the device is failing, and you can actually maybe repair it with the modular design, or just, we didn't explain a modular design, we just said this is a normal phone. For the modular design, just keep in mind, we explained the concept of modularity, but did not show this image just as in the case of the Fairphone. What we found then was interesting, is that we found this positive effect of willingness to repair of the modular design, just as expected, but people were not so inclined to do it themselves, to our surprise. They said, like, okay, modular design, yeah, let's repair it, but let's go to a professional. Of course, that's good, because at least they wanted to repair it, but a professional also, again, adds a barrier, and you want to make it easy as possible in order to, yeah, make repair the normal practice. If you need to go to a repairer, you need to find the repairer, you need to call the repairer, you need to pay more money, because of course the repairer also wants to earn some money. And in a modular design, actually, that's not what you want to. You want people to take the own initiative. So what we thought, okay, we need to do something in order to change the design and make sure that people will do it themselves. So in a follow-up study, we actually investigated the use of these icons, just as Fairphone has. So we showed people the inside. We showed them, like, hey, the different icons actually mean the different parts. So this is the part of the battery, that's the part of the camera, in order to make it easy to people and to show them, like, the repair is not as tricky as you think. There's just some screws, you can do it yourself. So again, you need to convince people, that they can actually take the initiative themselves and be in charge of this repair practice. And well, indeed, we found this positive effect. So if you indeed see this, the slide over here, the results. On the left, there's the professional repair with the dark blue, that there's no modular design cue, or in other words, there's no of these logos present. And the light blue is when the logos are present, so there's a modular design cue present. For professional repair, we don't really see that much difference, but for do-it-yourself repair, we do. So again, you need to really help and support the consumer in order to move them towards a repair practice. Then I would like to highlight something else, because those are all enhancing ability. And if you think back of the Falk model, we need motivation and ability. So just ability might not be enough. Now in repair, there's now the current status that, again, people are not so motivated because it's just not so pleasurable to do repair. So what I want to give to you today is like some inspiration on also how we can improve the motivation of people to repair. And one inspiring motivating repair technique is the Japanese kintsugi repair technique. This kintsugi repair technique is shown here in this image, and basically it means that you repair your ceramics if they are broken down in many different pieces, not just with ordinary glue, no, you take golden glue. That's why it has such a nice pattern, because of this golden glue. And what is interesting of this device, or this method to repair your ceramic bowl, is that rather than going from a case where you have a broken bowl that you're annoyed with, to like, oh, I come as close as possible to the original version, because that's usually what we do in the repair practices. We don't do that with the Japanese repair technique, kintsugi. No, we go from, oh, this cup is broken, to we have this beautiful, different cup. So we don't try to go back to the original version, because that's actually not achievable. No, we go to something different, which is actually more interesting. It's more unique, it's more attractive, at least I think so. And it adds to the story, because now it tells the story like, okay, I was broken, but my owner actually repaired me, and together we have this nice relationship going on. So it adds to the history that you have with a product. So I would say that repairers should not be considered, okay, we need to go back to the original version. No, we need to go back to something that shows that you have a relationship with a product and that you can add value to it yourself during the repair process. Another way of enhancing motivation, which relates to recycling and adoption of products made out of recycled materials, is this nice website of Shuga. Shuga produces yoga mats, and they don't produce just any yoga mats. They make them out of recycled wetsuits. So they take the wetsuits from the divers and the surfers and turn them into these yoga mats. And they really advocate that. So they really communicate about the fact that they're not taking any recycled material. No, they're taking recycled wetsuits. And they also communicate it in a pretty fun way, I would say, because they say wetsuits reincarnated. So there's a second life. Considering it's a yoga mat, it also fits well with the product. It has a second life, and it's still, in a way, a wetsuit, but it's not anymore. If you look at past research that have been showing that if you do this type of storytelling about recycled materials, this adds value to the product. So it adds value because people think, this is a pretty special product. It's not just any product. No, this is cool because it used to be a wetsuit. So this whole storytelling and adding value makes people feel special, and therefore they're more likely to adopt these types of products. So it enhances the motivation to perform these circular consumption behaviors. So all in all, we need to make sure that we take the consumer along, that we take the consumer and motivate them to perform new behaviors. Because we can talk about a circular economy, but we also need to create these incentives to trigger people. This brings me to my latest project. Jaco is already introducing it a little bit. My recent Vici Award, which I will be starting after the summer. And in this case, I want to turn to a sufficiency-based circular economy. I already heard some debates about, is a circular economy really enough? Well, I think we should also move beyond that to a sufficiency-based circular economy and make sure that people keep their products for a longer period of time. Because then you can actually, indeed, really preserve materials. It's not just recycling. You want to make sure that people keep the product for a longer period of time. Well, repair, of course, is one way to achieve that. But unfortunately, there's also a lot of products that are being replaced while functioning perfectly. We were really surprised when we tested that in our studies. In TVs, you can already imagine it's about 50% of the TVs that is working perfectly fine. But even in washing machines, which I would consider a very utilitarian product, 1 out of 6 washing machines was working perfectly fine, but still replaced by consumers. So in this Vici, I want to tackle those early replacements and see, okay, can we make sure that people have more value and see that value in their products? So of course, we can look at functional value, making sure that the products will last performing very well. You can also look at emotional values so that they don't wear out, epistemic values so they feel novel. But last but not least, we also want to look at mental book value. A mental book value is the concept that products just at some point in time, they have made it their money worth. So basically, with mental book value, people have an amount of years in mind, and after that they think, yeah, this product has actually served its time. So for a washing machine, for example, people say often like, yeah, 8 years, and after 8 years, yeah, it's gonna be dying soon on me because, yeah, that's just the normal lifetime of a washing machine. Why it's 8 years, no one knows. May also probably depend on the amount of usage that you had, but people then still have that in their mind. That's the mental book value. So in a way, they have some sort of accountancy principle where it slowly declines because they are assuming it should be lasting 8 years. So when it's close to the 8 years, it has made its money worth, and we can just go on and replace it. So what we see is indeed, if it's 8 or 9 years, this washing machine, and people have a specific condition, or they see some sort of a nice promotion of a new washing machine, they think like, okay, the washing machine is gonna be dying on me anytime soon anyway, let's already replace it and buy this new washing machine. So what we want to do in this project is, can we extend the lifetime of products by either making sure that the emotional value is being kept, epistemic value is being kept, so there's more experiencing of novelty, but also can we make sure that the mental book value is extended, so that people don't think 8 years is normal for a washing machine, but they expect a washing machine to last 15 or 20 or maybe even longer. So, and I wanted to give you a few first examples. As I said, I'm going to start this VT project, so maybe in a few years I can return and show you some results. But I wanted to at least give you some inspiration with some products that I think have that in them already, in the design. So if you look at emotional value actually suggests that while using the product, and by continuous using the product, it actually adds to the emotional value that you see. So it actually triggers your emotion more through the repeated usage. And a very nice example is this 999 bottles, because this 999 bottles actually counts the amount of usage of this bottle, and also therefore the amount of plastic bottles that you have prevented. So every time you use it, you can click the counter and count the amount of plastic bottles that you have saved from by using this bottle. So you can imagine if you have reached a high number, like in the picture here, 126 bottles, then you're starting to be quite proud, like, hey, it's actually going quite successful. I've saved already a lot of plastic bottles, and therefore you can actually also, are being more encouraged to actually extend the lifetime and to keep on using this product, and therefore increase the number of saved bottles. So again, by doing this interaction, by having this design intervention in the design of this product, you trigger people to actually continue the usage and therefore extend the lifetime of the product. The second example that I wanted to give to you is this mental book value. As said, it has to do with the amount of lifetime that you expect from a product. And of course, one easy way of tackling and extending the lifetime that we can expect from a product is, for example, labeling. I've seen several papers here on eco-labels. Well, you can easily imagine a lifetime label. And if you would have that and add it to a product, you can think like, okay, was not just any washing machine. No, this is a long-time washing machine, so it should last for a pretty long time. So that can already preserve more mental book value in the product. But I also wanted to show you some examples that are actually already here in today's society, but they're just not used for many products. For cars, we have all sorts of ways to see, okay, what is the remaining value in a car? We don't do that for a washing machine or for like a toaster or a coffee maker. You can debate why not. But in a car, we do have it. So in a car, you can say, okay, this car was 7 years old. But next to the fact that it was 7 years old, you can also check the amount of kilometers that has been driven. So in this case, you can see it was 110,000 kilometers. Well, for today's cars, that is not a few kilometers, but you can also still expect it to run another 100,000 kilometers easily, because most engines are pretty capable of doing that. So it also gives you trust, like, okay, it's 7 years old, this car, but with this amount of kilometers, I can drive safely for another 100,000 kilometers. And that's actually the same feeling that you want to give to other consumer electronics. You want to give people the feeling like this washing machine is now 8 years old, but it can easily go for another 8 years. And we need to find design interventions in order to help people get there and to be persuaded to think like, yeah, of course, I should not replace it now. I should just keep it and keep on using it. So if I want to conclude with a proposition, then I would like to propose that all consumers can behave more circular, but we should design an environment that supports them to do so. Thank you.
So, thank you very much. I forgot to explain that, but we decided that we will have the keynotes first and then do a joint Q&A with both keynote speakers. So I would now like to hand it over to Mary to introduce our second keynote.
Oh yeah, don't need that. Thank you, Jacco. I forgot I had this on. So yeah, thank you, Ruth. And let me introduce Kirsty Hobson, our second keynote today. And Kirsty is a reader in human geography at Cardiff University, and she has a long trajectory of critical research on environmental governance and sustainable consumption. Her recent work has been leading in offering a critical voice in circular economy scholarship, particularly in relation to the role of the consumer and consumption within those debates and talks. So Kirsty's going to talk to us for the next 20 minutes, and then we'll have a joint discussion. So thanks, Kirsty.
Great, thanks very much, Mary. So yes, I'm a social scientist, maybe a rare beast in this room, I'm not sure, but an anthropologist by training, so definitely quite a rare beast in this room. And I've ended up in a school of human geography for reasons I fully don't understand. But as Mary said, I've been thinking about the sort of circularity and consumption for a long time. And I want to take you on a bit of a journey with me back to 2012. So I was working on putting together a big funding project for the EPSRC, which is one of the UK funding organisations. And my colleagues were saying to me, okay, so you're the social scientist, this is all engineers and chemists, you're the social scientist. What's the social science stuff saying about, you know, sustainability and all that? The things that people do, you're the people person. So tell us about the people. So I started looking what the kind of discourse was, and circular economy started to emerge. And I thought, well, that's interesting. We've had sustainable lifestyles, we've had the green economy, what's all this circularity? That was only 2012. So here we are in 2023, which wasn't, you know, it's not that big a time. And the circular economy is everywhere. You have it in Wales, so where I'm from originally and where I live and work now. We are big on the circular economy. You have, obviously, the European Commission, the European Union. You have Canada's just got on board with the circular economy, and you have cities like Amsterdam. So that was very interesting. So I kind of was one of the early social scientists to go, this is going to be something, right? But there's still a story that I don't know, and if anybody knows it, please tell me, how it has risen so meteorically, if that's a word, in the last 11 years. So what happened behind the closed doors in the European Commission, I'm not really sure. If someone knows, if they were in that room, please let me know. So I got a bit excited about this, and I got even more excited when I saw this, which was the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. You may or may not have heard of them. This is one of the early diagrams of the circular economy. And it really has come to be one of these sort of emblematic representations of the circular economy. But of course, being a social scientist, we don't take these things at face value. So I looked at this and I thought, well, that's very interesting, because all the arrows and all the loops are around the consumer and the user. We are the center of this economy. Look at this. All roads lead to us and all loops go from us. So I was pretty excited about that. So, okay, there must be some pretty interesting ideas of who this consumer and user is at the center of all this policy, right? Because we're the most important actors, apparently. you know I'm setting myself up here to say that actually, when I started to look at where the policy was in terms of who this consumer user is, the depth of the psychosocial theory behind it was lacking, to say the least. And it's very easy to think, okay, well, this is just another iteration of the rational economic consumer that we've had since God knows when, since you know, sort of the Industrial Revolution, etc. And I thought, well, that's very easy to critique, but actually, it's a bit more interesting and a bit more concerning than that. Because what I'm going to say is that actually this consumer user is a dichotomous, almost schizophrenic individual. So, on the one hand, a lot of the literature and the policy was talking about consumer acceptance. We have to get the consumer to accept these new propositions that we're giving to them. That actually isn't the rational economic market, because in that theory, in that kind of sort of traditional economic theory, you have consumer sovereignty. Actually, this consumer here is more a kind of libertarian, paternalistic recipient of nudging. So actually, we're even more passive in this model. But on the other hand, you have the sharing economy, which is a fully socialized, we're all into it, we're all into community, we're all sharing our stuff, we're all borrowing from each other. And I thought, wow, how can you be both those things at once? And of course, it turns out that you can't really. So I've kind of taken it upon myself and with many other people in this room, so the critical literature around the consumer user in the circular economy has got a lot richer in the last few years. And there's a lot of really interesting critiques. I won't go into them in too much detail. Frank Figg's work, if you don't know his work with Andrea Thorpe, really interesting. They're looking at business, but what they're actually saying is that we're actually looking at the circular economy and we're finding successes because we're looking at individual businesses. We have to think about groups. We have to think about whole kind of ecosystems and actually think of the whole group. And they're correct, and they're very, very critical of where things are going. The Zink and Geyer paper, that was a real eye-opener. You know, we read papers all the time, and there's that few papers that really kind of change your life. That paper kind of changed my life because it made me realize, actually, the kind of gut feeling I had about where the circular economy was going might not actually be just me. And I put up that picture there because I'm telling a story now of my own experience, which is kind of, you know, one of the main issues with the circular economy, is that I was at a meeting in London about circular consumption. And there was somebody there from a sort of startup business who was borrowing, you know, you could rent clothes, basically. And they were really, really pleased with themselves. And it was great because they'd got loads of users. And they were very much, you know, happy about that. Obviously, their business had taken off, etc. And then they start making circularity claims. So, of course, you put your hand up, you're in the room, and you say, well, actually, did you ask the consumers if they are renting your clothes rather than buying? Are they doing it as well as? Are you actually displacing consumption, or are you adding to it? Deathly silence. Lots of side eye from other people in the room, like, don't ask such rude questions. I didn't think it was rude. I actually thought, you know, it was kind of important to be able to make those claims. So what we are seeing is a sort of growth of these sort of apps and different ways of borrowing and different ways of sharing, but actually the claims of their circularity are really problematic. So this is a study from, it's actually a few years ago, so it was pre-pandemic, but actually I don't think the pandemic changed that much. And this was an LE Europe study, and it had about 12,000 participants across the European Commission asking about, well, hello people, do you actually engage with the circular economy? And so lots of interest. I'd love to do that. It'd be really great. I wish I could do more of that. But actually, as the little snippets I've got here suggest, people aren't really doing it. They are repairing some things. So let's have a look at this, yeah. So they repaired some products in the past, but no experience of renting or leasing, buying second-hand products was more than 90% of people. So our intentions are there, but the actions are not necessarily following up. So usually at this point, people say, well, you know, it's early days and it's circular economy has not been around that long. But I'm more and more convinced that actually the path we're going is actually going to just increase consumption rather than decrease it, because we are telling ourselves some stories about, you know, the fact that there are more apps for sharing now, therefore means we're moving towards circularity. But actually, I would contend we have very, very little evidence to back that up from a consumer perspective. Right, I'm now going to tell you another story. Usually with these kind of talks, you're expected to like go big and have like big data and big messages. I'm going small. I'm going very small here. And I'm going to tell you about a recent project I had at Cardiff University. So Cardiff University is in Wales. You know, it's not a bad university. It's all right. So whatever institution you're at, you probably have small pots of money come around. And there was a little pot of money called Innovation for All. And it was about Cardiff University's civic mission. And I thought, well, this is interesting, because actually, are our students doing any sharing and repairing? Because I was hearing, not only from, you know, people on the street, but actually from my colleagues, that, oh, the young people today, they've been exposed to, you know, the Thunberg generation, and they've grown up with the climate emergency. They'll be fine. They'll just somehow sort it all out, because they're already all borrowing and renting, and they don't really care about stuff. So, of course, I thought, is that the case? So we applied for, it's Megan. Where's Megan? Is she here? There we go. So Megan, PhD student, worked as a RA on this project with me. And what we were basically doing was, what data existed on what students are actually doing at the moment. And we found out through quite a thorough literature review, and if we're wrong, please tell us, that there's very little information about students' sharing and repairing practices. There's lots of information about their values, there's information about their attitudes towards, you know, the environment and all of that. There's actually not much about what they're doing. So this pot of money wasn't actually a research project, but I managed to kind of, you know, sneak a bit in by saying, oh, well, we haven't got an evidence base to do anything. So we sent around a questionnaire to our students at Cardiff University. So this is undergraduate, postgraduate research. And we were asking them, what are you currently doing in this space? And we were partnering with Benthyg Cymru, which means to borrow in Welsh, and Repair Cafe Wales were our partners as well. So this was a very kind of quick and dirty bit of a questionnaire. And actually, I would love to run this in other universities and get more universities involved, actually looking at the practices of their students. So there's an open invitation for us to do more of this together. So this is some of the data. And you know, this is literally, I just did this like before getting on the train, so it's all a bit rough. But, so we asked students, oh, sorry, the question's not there. When you're borrowing items, how often would you borrow items from the following sources? As you might expect, they're borrowing from friends and family, so you've got often friends and family, from organisations like Benthyg Cymru, never was the most common response. Borrowing apps, again, hardly any were borrowing via apps. Other doesn't really matter because nobody wrote anything there. And pages, groups, and social media. So really, this idea that our students are fully engaged, you know, borrowing via libraries of things, borrowing via apps, etc., doesn't hold up for Cardiff University. This is sorry, I didn't say we had 400 students respond to the questionnaire. So no claims of representation, no claims of any sort of universality or anything. But I thought that was quite interesting. But, you know, not that surprising. We all probably just borrow more things from family and friends. We also asked what factors would make you not want to use a library of things. And actually, this lines up very, very closely with the results from the LE Europe report. So basically, what we're seeing is our students are acting very much like your normal standard consumer already. So these are 20, 21, 22. Most of our respondents were undergraduates. They're already very much within the pattern of what you'd expect from your sort of average consumer. And the reasons they give for not borrowing things are very similar to what the research shows for householders and homeowners. So it's not easy to collect and return things. Prefer to own things. I think that is very interesting because, again, I've heard a lot of assumptions about kind of, the younger people being somehow sort of dematerialized and they've got away from really wanting to own things. Well, it suggests that actually that's not necessarily the case. Well, actually, it's just not the case. Less convenient, unfamiliar with a library of things. Actually, it wasn't the best questionnaire, I'll admit that, because we had to define library of things on the questionnaire, and then they were familiar with library of things. So I'm not sure if we actually might have skewed that result. Incompatible with my needs or lifestyles, okay, that's probably not ranked as high. But what we're seeing here is a bit of myth-busting, I like to think, around the younger generation. Again, repairing, how often does this happen, and who does the repairing? Most of it was around repairing objects by myself or by my friends and family, not using repair cafes, some going to professional repairers. And there is Repair Cafe at Cardiff University, so it is there, and there's also one in the community. And it's not really working very well, and the students aren't very well engaged with it. So, oh no, sorry, I haven't that. So anyway, this is like the first look at our results. Megan and I also did some interviews with people, with practitioners at UK and Irish universities, asking them about their experiences. Because it really struck me that the money I received was a civic mission pot of money. And what I was hoping would be to be able to use this evidence to facilitate within my own institution a greater engagement with our students' repairing and borrowing practices. And this research has kind of made me an activist within my own institution around this because, for example, Cardiff University is doing really well on the Education for Sustainable Development Leagues. We're teaching students, we're sitting them in a classroom and telling them about climate change. And the expectation, weirdly, still seems to be that that somehow makes them into environmental ecological citizens. Well, I'm suggesting, in terms of circular economy, we're not doing our job in any way. So I would really like my own institution, other institutions, to really engage with these issues and help our students be able to actually repair and share. And I also ran a sewing workshop that was free for students to come along. That was really lovely. And during that, we sat and we talked about their repairing practices. And there's a definite hunger there from them to be able to do that. And strangely enough, I wasn't expecting. A lot of it was around home DIY, like how do you fix a radiator? So they definitely want to know how to do these things. So there's a lot more work that needs to happen in this space. And I was really struck by Julia Steinberger's comment yesterday about being an activist. I completely agree with her, and I think, it's not just about good evidence, it's also about ideology as well. We have to put that back in. And so this is my sort of form of activism, is actually trying to get my own institution to genuinely engage with our students and help them become circular citizens. But I'm also thinking, going back to that Ellen MacArthur Foundation diagram, how things are represented are non-trivial. And that butterfly diagram has become, kind of defined the field in many ways. And it strikes me more and more that actually that user-consumer with all the arrows and the loops is inviolable in terms of what is at its center, because it's not working. Because we have all these arrows and loops around us, and yet we have a very, very impoverished view of that psychosocial subject at its heart. And it makes me ask, what are we trying to achieve? We're not trying to just achieve repeated acts of repair, but capable, confident, and enabled repairers. That might seem like a small shift, But I actually think that's a very significant shift because it alters, as I said here, the theory of change at the heart of the circular economy. So if you think about not just the act of repair, but creating repairers, then actually it becomes about skills, rights to repair, access to tools, know-how, repair spaces, legal changes to warranty. It's not about technical flows. Of course, these technical flows matter, but the consumer user isn't secondary to that. And I actually think what we need to do is kind of cancel the Ellen MacArthur Foundation butterfly diagram and redraw the circular economy. In fact, Thank you. So what I'd love to do is to get a load of us in a room one day with some artists to facilitate it and actually do that, to actually draw it anew, the circular economy that has these enabled repairers and sharers at its heart. So let's get some funding for that. And I actually did try and start to draw it, but I'm really, really bad at drawing, and I just thought, no, I need other people to help me. So there's a genuine question for you. I was asked to kind of give some provocative questions. What do you think a repurposed and redrawn circular economy would look like? And I also think we have to ask, this is just my last point, the value that this would have to citizens in a rapidly climate-changing world of vast socio-economic inequality. A lot of what is written in the policy is kind of like, it's for the good of the citizens, like, it's a win-win. Why would you not do this? Well, there's lots of reasons why you wouldn't do this. And if it's about cost, if it's about time, which it often is, then in a world where you have, especially, well, coming from the UK, we've had Brexit, we've had the cost of living crisis, it's not good. So actually people finding more time and money to do things is actually really difficult. So we have to frame this in a way that is part of that narrative of kind of this changing world and sort of geopolitical instability and the everyday challenges of life, rather than it being this kind of narrative of sharing is caring, which doesn't really resonate with people. So I think, again, putting that kind of deep politics back into the circular economy is there's a lot of work to be done there. And I hope you will join me in that. So thank you.
Thank you so much for another very interesting presentation. I think we have seen two, well, in terms of strategies, complementary presentations, keynotes, also in the criticisms rather complementary, so together that makes a bigger picture, but that will rise to some questions as well. And we decided that we will do that together, so we also take 2 questions at a time. We will say, we like most of the questions that can relate to both keynotes, and at a certain moment we will also look whether there are questions online from the 20 participants that are joining online. So we agreed on that we would do a question at both sides. So,
do you have the second mic?
Sorry?
Oh, did they give us the second mic?
Yeah. Oh, the second mic is over here. Sorry.
Oh, it's there. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sigrid.
So,
great.
Who would like to have a question that is relevant? Does you see a first question that is on your side?
Okay.
Is there also a question on this side?
Can I start? Okay. Thank you for your presentations. And my question is mainly to both, but mainly to the second presentation. You showed this butterfly diagram of MacArthur. I personally have the impression that the main actor is not on this diagram. It starts with the manufacturer and not with the planner and the designer. So because when the manufacturer has to manufacture, there's very, very few degrees of freedom. And the designer is outside. So for me, all this repair business is greenwashing for bad design. Yeah, they design for planned obsolescence, they design scrap, and you buy scrap, but you have the right to repair it.
I think that's a clear question.
Yeah, and this is what I call circular economy.
Yeah.
So don't we think I don't want to have the right to repair. I want to have a right for a functioning, good, working product. And this is what I miss in these discussions. Yeah. And so my question is, I will have to put a question also. How do you see this?
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
We take a second question over here.
Thank you for your presentation. So my question is about, there is an angle of like upgradability with circularity, like Fairphone is a good example of it. So I have a personal experience. I have a 2010 iPad which I want to use, but the software is no longer upgrading, okay? And then if I have to get it repaired, nobody is willing to repair it. So who should take the responsibility? First of all, it should lie on the companies? Second is it feasible to hold the parts for so long, having that inventory and creating that waste, and how to judge how much number of parts for a certain product which was made 20 years back when they need to hold it? So that kind of feasibility. Feasibility.
Sorry, thank you. Well, so maybe we can go to some reflections or answers from your side. Maybe we first go to you to get a...
I didn't actually get the question. What was the question?
The role of the producer.
No.
Yeah, what was the question? What we were talking about?
I didn't understand. Yeah.
One more time your question, please, Hans.
Don't you think that the main actor is not in the butterfly diagram? This is the designer.
Oh, is it?
The designer of the product, because the designer, he or she decides if it's repairable, if it's durable, if the thing. Yeah.
Well, I don't think there is just. I don't think we have to agree on one main actor. I think everybody has a role to play, and I was in a meeting online with Brussels with the Greenpeace Europe, and there was somebody there from the European Commission, and they were talking about products. And I was saying, but you're still talking about people buying stuff. Actually, what we're asking of, I don't talk about the producer, and I don't really know that much about manufacturing. But the proposition to all of us is that we have a different socio-psycho relationship with our material culture. It's not just about being able to get something that lasts longer. It's actually how you value that. And so it goes deeper than an act of repair. So that's a very overly wordy way of saying, I don't think there is one most important actor in this. I think it depends what you're actually talking about, what actual product you're talking about, what practice you're talking about. We're talking about products all the time. Why aren't we talking about practices, which is actually the things we do around all the products? So, yeah, I don't think there is one.
And what would you like to add here?
Yeah, I would like to add a bit. I actually work at a Faculty of Industrial Design Engineering, so we educate designers, but we don't train them from a circular economy perspective, saying like repair is okay, then you have a circular economy. We also advocate them with saying, okay, you have these different loops, and actually the inner loops are more preferred. So if you can keep the product working well for a long period of time, as you suggested indeed, you don't want to repair, you just want a functioning product, that is the preferred route. So in that sense, I agree that with Kirsty that there's not just one responsible stakeholder there. And I also, I tend to disagree with the statement to suggest like, oh, the producer is just unwilling and designers are unwilling, because, well, at least the design students that we train are very much willing to engage in a circular economy and to really strive for these products that work well and also work on the inner loops rather than just the outer loops of repair and recycling.
And let's move to the responses to the second question.
Shall
Could I start with that? Yes,
that
please.
Okay, if I recall, the first was about software, and of course software is a big challenge, because indeed, if at some point your product is still working but the software is not supported, then the product is actually not working. So there's, of course, software is an integrated part, I would say, in the performance of the product. And as a company, you should also make sure that the software keeps on being supported. And I can imagine that legislation is important to achieve that, so that at some point, indeed, also from a European Union perspective, it's like, okay, software should be at least available for this amount of years. With respect to the upgradability, if I recall your question, it had to do also with the amount of upgrades and if at some point the environmental performance is maybe not optimal because you're replacing too many modules, right?
No, the question was, let's say a product was made in 2010, okay, and technological advancement happened, better versions are available, but I'm still using that product and I want to repair it. The company doesn't have a part now. So should the company be made responsible to hold those parts for a certain amount of time so I get my circularity, I get my repair, because companies say we cannot repair it anymore.
Actually, there's indeed in the right to repair, there is some legislation already in practice with the amount of years that repair should be offered from a company perspective. So I totally agree that should be indeed, there should be a certain amount of years that you offer that. And yeah, now I think it's somewhere between 5 and 10, depending on the product category. But you can easily debate whether that should be longer. If you really want to go for long-lasting products, then yeah, we should extend that. And 5 years is then just not enough.
And Kirsty, what are your views on this?
I have zero views on this.
Okay, that's fine too, of course.
Yeah.
I'll give it now to Mary for the next 2 questions.
We can move on to the next question. So we have one here, and I'll take one over here as well. Thanks.
Rita Shimon, Czech Republic. Thank you for the great presentation. I have some provocative question because very often I'm feeling in the wrong film. So I would like to put here my Eastern European perspective. 5 years ago, we have everywhere repair. We used the iPhone. We did not have iPhone at first because it was not available, and we used the things for 5, 10 years. If a cell phone was broken, we just repaired it. And then the Chinese e-shop came, and the price went down, so everything was available, and no one is willing anymore to repair anything. We are throwing away, and the repair shops, they disappeared, of course. So my question is it not more question of price, question of mental thing, mental cultural thing? We are just used to buy the best, the newest, and the most performing goods. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just go around here. Get another one at the back. So, yeah, wait. Can pass it up.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I had a related question to what was asked before about the role of designers. So I happened to notice that in the bottle, it's 999 is the maximum number of uses, which if you use it daily, maybe it's less than 3 years. So how do you get designers to also think differently about this lifespan or normal lifespan of, and isn't that more important than the consumer's idea, or doesn't that come before? What do you concretely do about that at the moment? Thanks.
Okay, so would you like to respond? So we have the 2 questions.
That question about Eastern Europe. Yeah, thank you for that. That's a really important one, and I think you're absolutely right that we feel that once hyper-consumerism hits, it's very, very hard to draw back from that. And certainly in previous research I've done about mobile phones, we were trying to come up with a product service system that would actually allow you to drop your phone off and then you could get it repaired and bring it back, or you can get it upgraded. And the younger participants in our research said, having my phone for an hour, like literally they would not hand over, be phoneless for an hour. And that was a real shocker for me because, I'm not 21 anymore. And it's like, well, I think my phone's in my bag somewhere, I don't know. It is. I think we have to remember that actually once it starts to roll out culturally, it is very hard to pull back. And I think that's why there's been multiple attempts to kind of frame and reframe, making repair cool, making it one of community. Like how actually do we, rather than trying to compete with hyper-consumerism, because you never can, you can't. So how do you reframe it in a way? And I suppose the optimism I take from my own little bit of research at Cardiff University is that there is an appetite, and the appetite is around feeling a bit de-skilled in that world of hyperconsumerism and actually feeling a little bit at sea and a bit of a victim, actually, that, you know I'm being taken for a bit of a ride by capitalism here, but what can I do? Well, here's some things you can do. And I found the students responded like really well to that sort of sense. I'm going to use the word empowerment, which I don't like, but you know, it's a bit of empowerment going on there. But it almost feels like you have to sort of go through that hyper-consumerism to start to come out the other end, rather than kind of leapfrog over the top of it.
If I can add a bit to that, I think basically what I wanted to say in my presentation is also that indeed it's in the current way of repair practices, it's something considered negative. So we also need to change the way that we look at repair practices by either changing the design, by changing the environment. Indeed, repair cafes show that in a certain setting, of course it doesn't work for everybody, but in a certain setting, there can be very like social community and like, hey, this is actually, we are enjoying this and we're doing this together. So then you're really adding something to it. And that, again, that doesn't work for everybody, but we need to find all sorts of design interventions in order to make it worthwhile for others as well. So I agree that that has been the way of looking at things, something negative, but I'm pretty sure that designers have the creativity to turn it around and make it a pleasurable and exciting endeavor to repair stuff. Which maybe brings me to the second question.
Very briefly. Yes, please.
To the second question, I would like to say that indeed, I agree. Designers are important to tackle here, and actually because they are, in my opinion, the key. Consumers, although I see their interest in the concept and their motivation to do so, they just are not doing it because they have all these conflicting needs and they have all these conflicting benefits, and as a result, they end up not doing it, as we saw with the repairing of the battery of the smartphone, as I asked you. And so I think designers are the key in order to make that change and to make these interventions to make sure that people change. So in a way, I am trying to target designers because I target design science. I also target my design students. So in that sense, I hope to change and make also the design field aware of that. And I think together with my colleagues in the design field, that is working. So designers are becoming much more aware of these issues in order to make that change. I hope that answers your question.
Can I just
sort
say,
of.
can I just say, can I just quickly say something?
First you can add.
No, I mean, even though I look at consumers and users, I do also think design is really important. And I think it's important from the perspective of that I've been doing some work with colleagues about the idea of consumption work. So actually the labour that you have to put in to be able to do consumption. So that might be, scanning your own stuff in a supermarket or building stuff you get from IKEA. So that kind of labour. And actually, I think good design for a circular economy comes with some alteration of the consumption work that's required to go into the use. So rather than designers trying to compete with the market as it is, and say, yeah, we can be like this phone, but better, faster, smarter. No, you can't. You're different. And actually capitalize on that difference. Like I bought a toaster, which is fully repairable and all of that, and it comes with a lifetime warranty. But actually, it's very different how it doesn't have a spring in it. So the springs are usually what breaks in a toaster. So it has a lever. So I kind of have to now stand there next to my toaster and just observe the toast as it matures. Actually, it's quite a zen moment. But my consumption work around my making of toast has now changed because somebody did some smart design. And I think that has to be factored in as well.
Couldn't you fry it on a pan then?
Okay.
I'll give that a go. I'll give it a go. I love my toaster, though.
Yeah. This is also where we have to wrap it up now. Before, because I think we're already on time, of slightly over time. Before I give it back to Mary for the final words, I just would like to say, I heard some of the criticisms and the support for that in this room. So we did not really get to that part of the discussion yet. So we clearly need a more critical discussion on the circular economy. And we don't have time now here, but we have still the conference dinner. And I also would like to add, there is also still a lot of potential in the circular economy. But we should not forget that some of the criticism of the circular economy could be solved or require the knowledge that are in the sustainable consumption and production community. So these two topics and these two groups, they need discuss or get into more in contact so that the inputs from this community are better heard in the circular economy discussions, is my view. Well, I can't ask you for a response to that, because I would like to hand it over for the final things and the final closure of the session to Mary.
Thank you, Jaco. So to close this session, I would like to ask our two keynotes today to please put a word on the puzzle. So
I'm redoing the puzzle in between.
Ruth has placed deep structural change.
Yeah, it needed a deep structural change to make my piece fit.
Okay. Somebody else's piece, deep structural change. Okay.
So what are you
Yes, I
adding,
can,
Kirsty?
of course.
Oh, that doesn't go there. See, I'm no good at
So-
jigsaw puzzles. Where's it go?
From, I think it might go on the edge, but
Oh, yeah, you're right. Thank
Yes.
you. Yeah, I'm just going to
the,
put it over
the
here then.
boundaries are blurred. So Kirsty has placed inequality as her word. So I think that's central for just transition,
Yeah.
just circular transition, and Ruth has placed design. So.
Thank you.
So thank you all for coming here today. So we've had Ruth Moga and Kirsty Hobson. Oh. So right here, oh yes. So we have a small gift, some Wageningen wine for you both. So you can crack it open later. Yeah. So thanks. Forgot it.